My name is Philippe Vergne. I'm the director of MoCA in Los Angeles, and I'm thrilled to be able to tell you a little bit more about these two amazing exhibitions that we have on right now, the William Popel exhibition at the Geffen and the Sturtevant retrospective on Grand Avenue. These two artists, Sturtevant and Popel, because they're amazing artists. That's always the way we make decisions. We look at the work. Sturtevant, because we are the only museum with work in our permanent collection. She was a fantastic, extremely radical artist, and this is her first retrospective. It was initiated by MoMA in New York, but because we have this work in the collection, it was important for us to host the exhibition. She also had a long relationship with Los Angeles, so I wanted to reconnect the dots there. Popel also has a long history, or an history with MoCA. He was in Group Show. We have work in the collection. We approached him a few months ago, asking him if he would agree to do a new work or a project for us at the Geffen. He is an amazing artist. It's his first project in a major museum in the United States. So yes, two exhibitions are kind of announce the future of what I would like the program to be. A first museum project with Popel, a commission, and then a very important historical exhibition, a retrospective, which is related to the nature of our collection. But both dedicated to artists that right up to now were not really looked at with, I think, the level of rigor that they need to be looked at with. Sturtevant was a troublemaker. Early in her career in the 60s, she started to, as she said, make other artists work. So she would look at a Warhol painting and she would think that it was an important painting, so she would decide to do it again. Same thing with artists like Jasper Johns, same thing with artists like Claes Oldenburg. By doing so, she was rubbing the wrong way an entire history of modernity, where the artist is the center of the work, the author. She was questioning the notion of authorship. By doing that, she was also reshuffling the cards of a burgeoning art industry, where you would see a Warhol and then you would see a Sturtevant, and then you would be, well, what am I looking at here? She would create this notion, this space for doubts when it comes to icon. What was very important too in her work is that she almost only remade work by male artists as a woman. So she was inserting herself in an art history mostly written about male, by male, for male. There is something absolutely revolutionary about the way she was operating. And she did that her entire career. She never changed courses. She was always after this moment of absolute iconography, iconophilia, that she was actually pushing towards iconoclasm. Because as she was remaking this image, she was actually also destroying them. When Peter Eadie, who was a curator from MoMA, MoMA PS1, started to work on the exhibition, I was very proud of him and very proud of MoMA to do that, because I knew how difficult the reception of her work had been traditionally in this country.
The exhibition is called Double Trouble, which reprises a quote from an interview that she gave in the last 15 years, where she talks about the perverse simultaneous double trouble of being ahead and also being behind. She joked often that she had no curators on her exhibitions, and I think that points to one of the central ways in which she saw her practice functioning, in that she made most of the decisions that we associate with curatorial work.
It became very important for me to be able to host Sturtevant retrospective here in Los Angeles and at MoCA. We are one of the rare museums to have major work in our collection, one Stella and one Jasper Jones. And we might be the only actually museum having this group of important work in our collection. The exhibition itself has about 40 works that cover the entire career of Sturtevant. What was fascinating and what the exhibition shows is how much she was working in real time. She was not waiting for art history to capture and rubber stamp an artist. So she worked with Warhol, and that's what the exhibition shows when Warhol was working. She worked with Felix González Torres when Felix González Torres was working. So she had this immediate ability to capture the most important aesthetic breakthrough of her time. The nature of her work really kind of brushed the art world the wrong way. She purged many taboos in the art community, in the art world, and she had no patience for mediocrity. She had no patience for people who were not doing their homework. And until the end, she had this level of, her standards were so high. She was quite wonderful.
Beginning in 1964, at a time when pop art was already being critically questioned, Sturtevant began making repetitions of the art of her peers, with a flag by Jasper Johns and also a silk screen that she made using Andy Warhol's screen from his flower paintings.
If you look at the history of Sturtevant and the way she identified the most important artists of her time and made their work, I don't think you can say she was copying them, appropriating them. I think the best way to describe what she was doing is to say she was making other artists' work.
She did, in certain cases, seek the participation of artists, most notably Andy Warhol, who she asked for 2 of his silk screens, his flower silk screen and also the one he used to make his Marilyn Monroe paintings. He allowed her to go to the studio and take the screens, which is slightly different, of course, than giving them to her. He understood and appreciated what she was doing. He had spoken in the years before she began making her versions of his work about how great it would be if everyone took up his silk screens and no one would know the difference between his and anyone else's.
Our collection at MoCA has also very deep holdings in Bob Rauschenberg, in Jasper Jones, in Claes Oldenburg. All the artists who at the beginning of her career she identified as targets.
She made her own versions of works that changed significantly those physical attributes of the pieces that she was using as her subjects. An early work of Roy Lichtenstein, for example, of a crying girl, only existed in Lichtenstein's work, in fact, as a print. Sturtevant turned it into a painting. She used it as an object in space on its side, as if it's in the process of being installed or unpacked. We don't really see a show of works that we would confuse with their originals. We see arrangements of those works in space, really as a form of installation art.
For me, it's also very interesting to see as you enter our building, our galleries, that you're going to have this moment of illusion. And you will enter Sturtevant's show, and you're like, oh, is that a Warhol? Is that a Warhol from MoCA's collection? Where am I? And this moment of confusion that she, I think, deliberately created with her work. Sturtevant was extremely playful, but always in a way that was rubbing against status quo and convention.
Sex and death, sex and death, sex and death.
Since I've been in the United States, I was always surprised shocked that she was not represented in an institution, that she didn't really have a presence in the art community. The nature of her work really kind of brushed the art world the wrong way. She pushed many taboos in the art community, in the art world, and knowing that an institution like MoMA and PS1 would actually embrace Stuart event and actually do the show in the mothership at MoMA, I thought was very, very important and very courageous.
She was an artist who responded very much to the conditions of her time throughout the 50 years that she was really working actively. She was also working through questions about the larger political context in the US at that time. She chooses to save a piece of the newspaper which reported on a stock market record. This is, of course, the early years of the US involvement in Vietnam. And she used that piece of newspaper actually as the substrate for a work of Jasper Johns' Simple Digits 0 to 9. When we look at that article, it's clear that the New York Herald Tribune's reporting connected the stock market record in part to the buildup in Vietnam.
She never stopped seeing what was groundbreaking, seeing what was going against the convention, up to the late work in the show, when she moves away from working with works of art and from works of art, when she starts to explore the way images enter our mind, enter our memory. From image of advertising, from images that do not belong exclusively to the art world. At the end of the day, I think her work was one of the most radical, iconoclast work that could have been produced at this moment of time.
My name is Bennett Simpson. I'm senior curator at MoCA. I've been here for 8 years now. MoCA, I think, has from the beginning been a kind of risk-taking place. Maybe it has not always had the polish or package of other museums, but we have consistently kind of done things with artists that are very unique, experimental, challenging, first time for a lot of things. I was in Chicago at a panel discussion. I was on a panel at the University of Chicago, and Popel came up to me afterwards and said, "Hey, I have a project that I think would be great at the Geffen." At that time, we were really in transition. We didn't have a director. There was a lot kind of on hold in some sense. But I said, let's talk again in a few months. I knew things were going to clear up and clear out, and then Popel proposed this work called Trinket. Trinket consists of an American flag, a custom-made American flag, 54 feet long, 16 feet high, that hangs on a pole in the middle of the Geffen. And it is being blown by 4 really big special effects fans. If you need a big wind, you use these fans. The fan blades are 7 feet in diameter. They're huge machines. We see flags all the time. Flags are commonplace, no big deal. Big flags, we see them all the time. But you don't see one indoors and you don't see one up close. You can stand 5 feet away from this flag. The flag feels alive. It's kind of rippling and snapping in the space of the museum. And there's a lot of wind. And it's blowing you too. If you stand in certain places in the wind, you can affect the way the wind blows, and you can affect the way the flag flies. The ends will become tattered and frayed. Popel, the artist, has helped them along that path by kind of loosening the seams, so they're already kind of like tentacles at the ends. Over time, the flag will change. Just like over time, America changes. The concept of democracy changes. Who we are in relation to nationhood changes. People have asked, what's the 51st star for? Why are there 50? There are only 50 stars on the flag. Why did he add a star? There are a lot of ways you can answer that. They're all interesting. Potential for change, potential for more. There's always a potential for more in America, There's always like a little something extra for you. So the metaphorical potential is rich. This is not a show that would happen at LACMA. This is not a show that would happen at the Getty or the Hammer. I think you find things at MoCA that you don't find at other places. And Popel's show was one of them. You know, he's an artist I'd always wanted to work with. And I was thrilled when Philippe arrived. He kind of got behind the project. He's really one of the artists who pushes the kind of envelope of what, you know, what performance art is, what installation art is. He asks big questions in his work that have lots of different answers depending on who you are and where you come from. The work is both utterly mysterious and very familiar and accessible.
I like this sort of, I like that objects in our culture, and maybe because we have so many of them, they start to take on qualities that maybe they don't possess. And the flag has this similar kind of, how would you say, animism about it, right? We bestow it this inner life. So I'm trying to take that seriously. This particular flag, this one out here, that one, I made it. We added 1 star. So that's my flag. It's not yours, it's mine. Only kidding. We share in the largesse, don't we? Yes, we do. Trinket is the largest work in this exhibition called Trinket. The show has been built in a way with sort of Trinket as a kind of flexible center, oscillating, if you will. The hinge between Trinket and the other works in the exhibition is duration. An active enduring is something that talks about an ongoingness, but an ongoingness that has, it's under stress. Like the flag is falling apart. Over time, the flag will simply open up like a flower. That in itself suggests a kind of aliveness. So I think the flag for me is sort of the, it's a space. It's a space of disagreement and agreement. And that's what makes it a very interesting space. You have to honor it in a way that you wouldn't if it was a lapel pin. And you respect its power, which is what we're supposed to do with a flag, I suppose. But I think a number of Americans have been questioning their relationship, their coziness to this emblem. You know, a nation that decides that it is larger than justice, or a nation that decides that it is larger than knowledge, or a nation that decides that it's larger than its citizenry. You know, it's sort of like that mouse that believes because it can blot out the moon with its paw, that it is mightier than the moon. And I think that nations make that error. And so in certain ways, you know, flags are, how would you say, they're prostheses. We use flags to prop up certain desires or lacks that we have. Perhaps that is why the flag can be so contentious. Many people have diverging opinions and attitudes about, and causes them to come to fisticuffs. What word would best suit this? And I thought, well, why not a word that has very little space in it? When speaking of big things, use small words. Trinket. It has more letters perhaps than I would like.
Jeffrey Valence is a troublemaker. It's funny, someone has told me recently that you don't like pretty art. And it's not about trouble or not being pretty, it's about not being polite. I don't like polite art. And none of them, Sturtevant, Popel, or Jeffrey Valence, they're not polite. They, they enter a room, the room of art history, and they make us slightly uncomfortable. And that's what Jeffrey Valence has been doing with a practice that put in question our fetishism, our belief system, or mode of representation. And there is in his work something which is performative, something that for me comes out of the legacy of artists from the 70s, let's say the Fluxus movement, where the work of art didn't exist in a conventional way, but existed through prints, through sending letters, through making actions, everything that one could imagine to question the status quo. And Jeffrey Valence, in many ways, is doing that. Blinky was a lovely, beloved chicken. Jeffrey masterminded an entire performance around the character of Blinky. He started to think of the project after visiting a pet cemetery and realize how much emotional attachment we as human beings have to animals, and what we wrote on what is written on the tombstone, and all this ritual of love. So he created this character on Blinky, then he organized all the ritual. There was a small coffin that was manufactured. There is this moment where you have the open casket ritual where you can come and pay respect to the loved one, and he ran into trouble because Blinky didn't have a head, so it was difficult to place the little pillow. So he created exactly what you would do for a loved one, human or pet, and he got it buried.
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
When I was a kid, I used to visit pet cemeteries, and I would go there, and when I would look at the tombstones, I never knew whether I wanted to laugh or cry, because they always had these lines on them like "Daddy's little baby" or "Our little fluff ball," or some kind of funny little saying. So it's like you wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. And it got me thinking about animals, and we have like animals that are pets and some animals that we eat. And I was wondering, what is a pet? And I was thinking, would a piece of meat be a pet?
One day, I went to the meat department of Ralph's supermarket and looked at frozen chickens in plastic bags.
The first thing that I did, the number one thing, was name Blinky. Yeah. Farmers and people raising livestock, they say that you should never name the animals, because once you name the animals, then it's no longer a piece of meat, but it's like a living being. And people ask me, where does that name come from, Blinky? When I would go to the pet cemetery and read the headstones, there were a lot of names that sounded like that. There was like Winky and Fluffy and Binky, all these things that sort of sounded like that. So I wanted to pick a name that sounded like the other pets, but also I wanted to pick a name that had something to do with chickens. Chickens don't see the way we do. Their eyes go this way, so if they're looking like at a bug on the ground, they have to sort of turn their whole head and sort of blink. So you have this idea of like Blinky is like something that chickens do. Blinky is kind of a stand-in for us, because I couldn't go out and bury a human, but I could go through the same exact process with a pet or with a piece of meat. I went in and ordered the full funeral service, and you got a coffin, and you got the plot and the headstone and the whole thing. And I knew it would kind of be a problem, because it's all dressed and plucked and it's half frozen.
Here is a photograph of the cemetery office. I ordered the complete funeral service, including a powder blue casket with pink satin lining, a lot, interment, flower vase, viewing room, and grave marker.
The only question that they came out and asked me, like once they opened the box, they came out and they asked me, "How did your pet die?" And then I looked up and I said, "I don't know, one day it just died." And they had Blinky in an open casket, and I wasn't really ready for that. And they had this nice little pink satin that Blinky was laying on. And this was a funny thing that they did. It's like, obviously Blinky didn't have a head, because it was chopped off, but they had a little pillow. So they laid Blinky in the casket and put the pillow where the head would have been if there was a head. So I was just looking at this, you know, just totally amazed. And then they brought Blinky out, and they had, you know, dug the hole, and they had like artificial grass around the grave, and then the workers came and lowered Blinky into the grave. And this was another shocking thing that I didn't think I would see, is that on the coffin, instead of writing Blinky, they had my name written on the coffin. They had Valance. So when I was looking at it, it was sort of like watching myself being buried. I mean, you know what I mean? So I wasn't ready for that. So Blinky was buried, and they put the grass back on, and then they brought out the headstone, and it was put into place.
Here is Blinky's granite grave marker. You are welcome to visit Blinky and the peaceful cemetery grounds 7 days a week during daylight hours.
I've seen people go out there and have like a picnic on the grave, and usually it's like a chicken dinner, and they'll leave like the plates and the bones and so forth, and they'll leave little fetish objects. Anything can happen at Blinky's grave because it's open and you can visit it any time.
Map of Los Angeles Pet Cemetery and location of Blinky's gravesite.
1 year after I buried Blinky, I published a book about Blinky. At some point, Blinky became part of popular culture. One day, out of the blue, I got a call from the David Letterman show.
He is an artist based in Los Angeles, California. Two of his most popular works are entitled Blinky the Friendly Hen and Cultural Ties. He will explain both of these projects. Welcome, please, Jeffrey Valance.
The thing that's kind of interesting about that, and I'm not really sure why, is that you don't see a lot of artists on talk shows, and I'm really wondering why that isn't the case.
Oh, that's nice. It's a terrible thing to have happen to a loved one, though, to see them thaw like that.
They make a mess.
So that next day, when I was going to like cafes and stuff, people were going, "Hey, that's the chicken guy," and I'm just walking down the street. So I was like, I was like famous for like one day only, and then the next day that stopped. But you know, it like added to the myth of Blinky. Later, on the 10th anniversary of Blinky, I made a videotape about Blinky. How can I bring Blinky back? How can I do something fresh? And I thought, oh, I will resurrect Blinky.
Mr. Valance would now like to exhume the body of Blinky for the purpose of conducting avian necropsy, autopsy, and lab tests to attempt to resolve certain questions which have arisen concerning the circumstances of his pet's death.
The first thing I got was a lawyer. I got like a lawyer and a doctor and a scientist, because I was going to have Blinky first exhumed, and then I wanted Blinky's bones tested, and there was a autopsy, and then I wanted to take like tissue samples to answer that question that I was talking about. How did Blinky die? So it was like going through that whole process backwards in a way, to like try and find the origin of Blinky's death.
The cause of death cannot be determined. It may have been traumatic due to the fact that several bones appear fractured.
I kept a few of the bones and later put those in like these golden reliquaries. So I have that series. I saved like everything from the process. So you have the original flowers from Blinky's funeral. Blinky has a shroud, and this is a real thing. It wasn't something that I made later, but it was during the original Blinky piece. I was taking like photographs of the carcass, so I put Blinky on this piece of like butcher paper to like take the photographs, and I was taking the photographs for like about an hour. But when I lifted Blinky up, Blinky was like starting to thaw, so she was like dripping blood. So when I lifted the chicken up, there was this print, you know, very vague and very light, but it was a print that sort of looked like the Shroud of Turin. So we have the Shroud of Blinky, which like brings us back to the story of Christ. It's like Christ and Blinky almost have the same type of relics. I didn't have all this deep meaning associated with Blinky, but over the years, I had lots of time to think about it. I started reading in the Bible, and there's one place in the Bible, of all the animals in the world that Christ compares himself to, he compares himself to a chicken in the Bible. He says something like, I would like to gather all my people like a hen gathers her chicks. So in a way, he's like calling himself a chicken. And I realized that no one has like picked up on that. You like have like the Lamb of God and the dove, but nobody dares make Christ as a chicken. So I started to think about that sort of being this like a sacrifice, this like ritual sacrifice that brings in this whole spiritual aspect to Blinky. So you kind of have these layers from humor to serious and prank to like spiritual, and it goes back and forth. I was supposed to do a piece in 2008, but this is like fate, and it was like all set up, but I couldn't do it because I got sick, but I got chicken pox. 30th anniversary of Blinky, I made an entire Blinky chapel where I gathered up all the relics and all the pieces and all the things of Blinky, and made like a real chapel, and had like an altarpiece, and it was, you know, it was like a full-size building. What's Blinky going to be in the future? I don't know. You know, how do you top that for like the 40th anniversary? I don't know. You know, something might happen.
My name is Martine Sims. I'm an artist based here in Los Angeles, and I make books, videos, and performances that tend to look at the myths of American culture. I was commissioned by Mocha TV to make a short video sort of in response to Khalil's piece, Mad. Him and I have been talking about collaborating on something, and one of the ideas that we had talked about was the story of my aunt who lived in Arlington Heights in this big craftsman, and she was a single woman for most of her life, but she had this board and care, and there were a lot of people that would come in and out of it. My aunt had died, you know, maybe 15 years ago. My dad had inherited this house, but around the time I met Khalil, my dad had sold the house, and so we were moving things out of it. And I chose the title Memory Palace because it's like a mnemonic device. A memory palace is a way that you can recall things. You spatialize your memories, and you think about a room. You know, say you're trying to memorize the state capitals. So you envision a room, and each thing in that room you give one of the capitals to. And so by recalling, you're basically walking through that room. And so we've been talking about this idea of, you know, how could we turn that into a film? And he had an actress that he was interested in, who was actually an incredible musician, Alice Smith. And Bradford Young, who's an award-winning cinematographer, was in town. And so we all just kind of got together to do a shoot just very loosely. And that is, you know, maybe a scene in a movie that might never exist, but using that, and then me sort of telling the story of meeting Khalil and my aunt and my relationship to the things in this house are what kind of comprise this piece. I'm interested in sort of fragmented storytelling.
You meet Khalil in the summer at a screening on Exposition Boulevard. It's the same week that Manhattan Place sells. In the morning, you pack boxes. You look through the attic for old issues of Ebony and Jet. You take home a photo album. You know who he is, even though you've never seen his picture. He knows who you are, too. You don't want to see her like that. You want to remember her the way you never knew her. She used to be bad, the good bad. You know her as a drunk, sitting in the kitchen with a high life, telling everybody what's what. Your dad lived there in the 70s when he first came to Los Angeles. Your brother lived there after college. Your cousin grew up in that house. Opportunity knocks. Spacious, classic craftsman home on a large lot near Harvard Heights and West Adams. This house features turn-of-the-century original details that include a central staircase with top and bottom landings, a living room with fireplace, and built-in cabinetry throughout the house. There's 6 bedrooms and 2.75 baths. This house is located in an ideal central LA location. Harvard Heights is one of the hottest up-and-coming neighborhoods in Los Angeles. You're surprised when he calls. You're sitting in the kitchen with a tea. You have a friend over. You smile, bringing a natural warmth of friendliness to your voice. You arrive a bit frazzled, but remind yourself that it's part of your brand. You show Khalil the photo album. You tell him about the house. You describe Auntie Queen. This could be a movie, he says.
A collection, a permanent collection, is an intellectual construct. It's like writing an essay. It's like writing a novel. It takes time. It takes a lot of conversation. It takes a lot of study. There are many ways to bring works towards a collection. You organize an exhibition and then you acquire a work from this exhibition, from this artist, in order to leave a trace in your collection. You start to follow an artist's work because you think it's important, so you bring works to the collection so that you can start, making a commitment to this artist. When you also develop this ability to collect by relationship you build with patrons. When, very often we need help. So patrons come to our rescue and help us acquire work for the collection. So MoCA has in its collection 11 major paintings by Rothko. The core of this group came through the acquisition of a major European collection called the Penza collection. We're talking about how do you build a collection. At the very beginning of MoCA's history, MoCA started this relationship with this absolutely incredible Italian collector. And at some point in his life, he decided that some of the work should be sold because of his relationship with MoCA, with some of the patrons that supported MoCA, because of the relationship with the first director of MoCA, Pontus Sultan. We were the chosen one. And we're lucky enough not only to bring this amazing group of Rothko work in our collection, but our role as a museum is to make sure that the integrity of the artist's vision is protected. There is the intellectual integrity that we need to protect, make sure that what the artist wanted for the work is respected, that the work is shown the right way. And then you have the physical integrity of the work. If we want this moment of art history to stay with us, these roots of contemporary painting, of contemporary art, we need to make sure that the physical integrity of the work is there, is respected and protected. You can photograph a work, you can write about a work, but there is something that will never change, is what's happening between your eyes and the work, the space that's happening. And that, if the work is compromised, it's not going to happen anymore. When you're in front of a Rothko, it's so sensitive, it's so precise, and it's so vulnerable that our role is to make sure that what Rothko, all the decision, all the gesture that Rothko put on this canvas is protected.
My name is Tatiana Thompson. I'm a paintings conservator. I'm the paintings conservator for the Museum of Contemporary Art. I have a private practice in Santa Monica. Well, the Museum of Contemporary Art in Los Angeles is extremely fortunate to have a very important and large collection of Rothkos, actually 13 in number. And because the collection is so important, we really want to do as much as we can to preserve these paintings for future generations. As with most paintings in all museum collections, they need to be constantly monitored and observed for changes in condition. And what we want to do with the Rothkos at this time is to take them off exhibition so we can do a thorough analysis of their condition and come up with a baseline evaluations so that we can know in the future if any changes have occurred. And this is going to involve removing them from the walls and doing thorough documentation, including photography and written documentation. At this point, I don't expect to find anything out of the ordinary. They have a bit of dust buildup, which is completely normal in any kind of museum exhibition environment. So we will be dusting them and checking the backs of the paintings, making sure that the support tension is proper and that the backing boards are archival. We do know that a number of them are not, so we will be replacing them with archival backing boards. Once the paintings have been removed from the exhibition spaces, they will be taken down into the storage area at the museum, and we will begin to examine them, both the front and the back, for their condition. And while we are examining them and documenting anything that we might find, we will also be doing very thorough photography. This includes front and back, many, many details, and taken in regular light, a raking light, and specular light. We also have started to use the iPad with our documentation, which has turned out to be very handy because we can take a photograph with the iPad and then with various apps actually zoom in on specific issues or specific areas of interest and notate that with text. So it's very handy, and it'll be very useful, I think, in the future for people looking at the painting to be able to see exactly where whatever issues we found are. And because they are in such excellent condition, we do just want to make sure that they are preserved for the future and do some very basic preservation treatments that will ensure this. We do know that Rothko's paintings are very fragile and are subject to, especially subject to problems with exposure to light and to fading. And there have been examples of that occurring in other paintings in other situations in the past. And of course, we want to be very careful here that won't happen to our paintings. And that is mostly being very sure that they're not exposed to excessive amounts of light for long periods of time. So in that spirit, we are taking them off exhibition for probably approximately 9 months. 9 to 12 months, in order to give them a rest from light, light exposure, and also to do these basic preservation and conservation treatments.
I am Emma Reeves. I'm the creative director of MoCA TV, which is the museum's YouTube channel. MoCA TV is dedicated to music videos. I mean, it's part of the DNA of MoCA TV. It started very early on with one of the biggest things, which still has the most views on MoCA TV, which is a Bjork video. Somehow, for me, there's more and more people who are coming out of an art world, if you like, the art world context, who are moving into either performing music in the musical context or creating music videos or a certain take on music videos. And maybe it's a generational thing, you know, a lot of people, you know, really consume music videos. There is a trajectory, you know, I think it's very interesting to see how people are expressing themselves in this medium. Devin Kenny is an artist. I've actually met him very recently, but he has had quite a few exhibitions. He was part of the Hammer made in LA, I think, last year. His music video is a really strange music video, actually. When you first watch it, you think you might be looking at a corporate sort of like early Apple ad or something like that, which I really love the aesthetic of it. It's very strange. It's not a music video in the conventional sense in a way, but it's sort of responding to that. So you see a group of people, there's a rap song, you know, over this group of people. Then you realize there's actually something really strange going on, and they're all sort of talking about social media, and it's actually a little bit intimidating. You're not really sure what is happening. So he's pushing the medium. You know, he's luring you in with the promise of a music video, but actually it's a strange world that he's created.
DIY-fi. Why try that Wi-Fi? Ain't Christ-like. Yeah. Look, all I can control. Endless scroll of wonder, here I'm fly. Gaming, layman, flaming, blaming, troll staining my console. DK that guy aiming, praise him at the council like I'm free. TYBG, I still trap though, I'm still trapped though. I still rap those routers in the foil and I'm quick to get lit in the phone. Using hit a leg, but that got was a search bar flap, what I did not know. Got a 3-dot globe, but telecom misconduct. So if it's free, best believe you are the product.
My name is Jasmine Shokrian. I am a designer. I have a fashion brand called Jasmine Shokrian. I was invited to create a space within the Mocha store that we got to design and sort of curate. I was able to work with people that I really love, relationships that I have with artists who also make things. It was my first retail space, so it was really exciting. The short video was created as a means to show my collection. It's a very short film made with my friends Eric Hart and Tatiana Lishkina, who are excellent photographers. My sister Josephine, who's a production designer, got to work with me on it. I actually was able to collaborate with them in an interesting way and, you know, give them the creative freedom to sort of take parts of the collection and create something more abstract, which is typically the kind of short that I like to make.
Silence, I discover, is something you can actually hear. I've always wanted to have a phone call with someone who doesn't talk. You and I are gonna meet here without knowing anything that goes on outside here. I'm opening the door. I'm opening all the doors. Tonight we improvise. You follow. I'll show you the way. Me, I would like to hide. It all runs together like a finger painting. I'd like to live in another city. I feel like I'm on a boat, drifting. Haven't I seen you someplace before? It's beautiful without knowing anything. People's memories are maybe the fuel they burn to stay alive. You and I are gonna meet here without knowing. Consistency is a dogma that has to be transgressed. Once you create an object, you always have to remain by its side. I was told it was an especially good night to be born. You and I are gonna meet here without knowing anything. It's like I lost the instructions, or I never had them. We must always tell each other and stay in the same place and still find ways to leave people. Does the machine become tired? I'm putting myself to the fullest possible use, which is all I think that any conscious entity can ever hope to do. The smell of walls and rooms. Does the machine become tired? I would listen to the house breathing alone. All the people sleeping. I felt safe. I've always wanted to have a phone call with someone who doesn't talk.
Teen Girl Fantasy is a collaboration between Nick Weiss and Logan Takahashi. and they're based in New York, but they have a lot of relationships here in Los Angeles. To create a music video around the song, they wanted to work with this South Korean rap star called Hoodie. We were able to bring Hoodie in from South Korea, and they created the video here in downtown Los Angeles. The director was Taron Allen and his partner, Tatiana Ballantine, who actually work in a visual world. They work to create experiences around sort of sometimes really amazing DJ experiences. It feels funny that it's about a sort of fetishizing of cars, you know, and to being in Los Angeles, that's amusing to me. The fact is she's in a car wash, in the car, which, you know, is a slightly, for me, it's slightly wry because everyone's so obsessed with their cars here, you know, and the sort of the idea that the whole music video would be based in a car, you know, and sitting having in a car wash. You know, the lighting is really beautiful. I love that very little happens, you know, in a way it's very, very slow and very sort of meditative.
to